Despite being described as an uncultured and irascible individual who was either hated or feared by most of the people he encountered, Cornelius Vanderbilt is also known as one of the richest men in history. He was a remarkably astute and wily business magnate who, at one time, held the title of the wealthiest man in the world. When he passed away, his fortune was reported to be greater than the total holdings of the United States Treasury at that time. Prior to the likes of Henry Ford and John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt was already known as the original robber baron, a term that was used to describe successful industrialists who amassed massive fortunes through their ruthless business practices. Nonetheless, Vanderbilt's life story remains one of the most inspiring rags to riches tales. Vanderbilt's ancestors were originally brought to America as servants, so his rise from nothing to immense wealth and power is a truly compelling narrative. Let us travel back to the early 1800s and see how it all began. At the tender age of 11, Vanderbilt left school to work on his father's ferry in New York Harbor, which primarily transported goods across the river. After learning the ropes, he aspired to start his own business doing the same thing. This meant that he had to acquire his own boat, so he borrowed $100 from his mother, who was a farmer. Though she didn't have a lot of money, she had some savings and was willing to lend it to her son on the condition that he cleared an extremely rocky field so that she could farm it. Vanderbilt had a strong work ethic and immediately agreed to his mother's terms. He soon realized that clearing the field on his own would take too long, so he convinced other local children to help him in exchange for free rides on his new boat. Together, they cleared the field, Vanderbilt repaid his mother's loan, and he bought his first boat at the young age of 16. Vanderbilt began transporting both passengers and freight between Staten Island and Manhattan, but he faced plenty of competition from other ship owners in the same line of business. However, Vanderbilt's strategy was to undercut everyone else and offer the cheapest fares on the market. He quickly earned a reputation for his reliable and affordable ferry services, but what really set him apart was his business acumen. After repaying his mother's loan, he reinvested all the profits he made back into the business. This enabled him to buy another ship, and then another, and then another. This is the basic blueprint for capitalist success. It's not unlike how Jeff Bezos built Amazon. By living frugally and reinvesting all business profits back into growth, repeating the process over and over again to build an empire. Because Vanderbilt worked relentlessly hard, he soon had a whole fleet of ships that transported both people and goods across a variety of different routes, earning him the nickname, the Commodore. His big break came during the War of 1812 between the United States and Great Britain, when the American government awarded him a lucrative contract to transport soldiers on his ships. Despite working long hours, Vanderbilt still found time to marry his cousin at the age of 19, eventually having 13 children with her. However, reports suggest that Vanderbilt was a neglectful husband and father, and he even had his wife briefly committed to an insane asylum. A few years later, he committed one of his sons to an asylum as well simply because he had epileptic fits, which Vanderbilt saw as a sign of weakness and mental derangement. On the business front, trade was booming, and by the late 1820s, Vanderbilt had discovered how to take his business to another level: steamboats. Cornelius recognized that steamboat technology was far more efficient than the ships he had previously used, so he invested heavily in purchasing steamboats. Employing the same strategy as he had with sailboats, he undercut every competitor and offered boat trips for free, regardless of making a loss. His goal was to bankrupt his competitors by taking all their customers and then raising his prices to more sustainable levels. This strategy worked well, bankrupting several businesses, while others offered him a lump sum of money to leave the area and not compete. As Cornelius' wealth grew, he continued to be considered an outsider by the wealthy elite due to his lack of school education and the way he looked and spoke. But Cornelius used his working-class beginnings to his advantage by advertising his ships as the People's Line. In 1849, Cornelius saw an opportunity to capitalize on the California gold rush, and he immediately began offering boat trips to California via Nicaragua, which was 600 miles shorter than the route everyone else was using. He made an exclusive deal with the government of Nicaragua, resulting in his trips being faster and cheaper than his competitors, leading to an increase in his customer base. As the gold rush grew, Cornelius cashed in on every single trip. In 1853, Cornelius took a vacation, something he had never done before. As he approached his 60th birthday, Cornelius Vanderbilt, who had been working tirelessly since childhood, decided to take a well-deserved break with his family on a tour of Europe on his newly acquired yacht. Unfortunately, things took a turn for the worse when he discovered that the two men he entrusted with managing his transport business in Nicaragua, Morgan and Garrison, had betrayed him by striking a shady deal with the new president, William Walker. This deal resulted in the exclusive rights to operate his ships being handed over to Morgan and Garrison instead of Cornelius. Upon discovering this treachery, Cornelius responded with a brief but ominous letter, threatening to ruin them. True to his word, he set up another transit company nearby and used his classic strategy of undercutting prices to win customers. He also refused to transport passengers to or from Nicaragua, effectively creating a blockade of the country, and convinced nearby nations not to recognize Walker's new government. Eventually, he even helped to start a war that resulted in the overthrow of the new government in Nicaragua, completely ruining those who had crossed him. Despite being close to retirement age, Cornelius did not slow down. In fact, he was about to monopolize a whole new industry. However, his personal life was not without its peculiarities. His first wife, Sophia, had been briefly sent to an insane asylum before she died in 1868. Just 1 year later, he married his second wife, Frank Armstrong Crawford, who was more than 40 years his junior and also his cousin. Apparently, Frank's parents had agreed to name their child after their best friend, assuming they were having a boy. When they had a girl, they still named her Frank as promised. Cornelius' personal life remained eccentric as ever, but his business ventures were just beginning to flourish. Always looking to the future, he saw railroads as the next groundbreaking technology after previously identifying steamboats as such. As he noticed more shipments being transported by train rather than by boat, he shifted his focus towards investing in railroads and selling off his fleet of ships. Prior to his involvement, there were numerous independently owned railway services, but Cornelius aimed to connect them and create an interconnected network, consolidating them into one giant railroad empire. This strategy led to a monopoly in railroad transportation, with Cornelius reinvesting profits into buying more railroads and expanding rapidly. Despite his aggressive persona, Cornelius did eventually redirect some of his wealth towards philanthropy, notably establishing the Vanderbilt University with $1 million donation, the largest charitable gift in American history at the time. However, his health deteriorated in his final years, and he passed away at the age of 82 from a complication of chronic disorders. Cornelius' fortune was worth around $100 million at the time of his death, equivalent to approximately $200 billion today. He lived modestly, consistently reinvesting most of his income and time into his business. The majority of his fortune was passed down to his oldest and favorite son, with the remainder split among his other children, whom he viewed as weak and undeserving. Despite being a polarizing figure, Cornelius drastically improved transportation through sailboats, steamboats, and eventually railroads, connecting different parts of the country and facilitating the transportation of people and goods at affordable prices. He played a significant role in shaping the American economy, and it's incredible to think that he turned a $100 loan from his mother into a fortune that few others in history have been able to match. Thanks for watching this video on the fascinating story of Cornelius Vanderbilt. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss out on our latest business stories. We have a lot of exciting content coming up, so stay tuned and be sure to check out our other videos on the channel. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.